Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. We'll start off our study circle with the first segment, which relates to a Quranic verse that we will study today. This verse, you can see, is being displayed before you. This is the 49th verse of the 51st surah, which is Surah Zariyat, and it has a very important message to give. So the brief words are وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ, and we have made everything in pairs so that you may be reminded of the hereafter. So one of the most important questions which faces each one of us is that one day all of us would be held accountable before the Almighty on the day of judgment. And this is something which our inner being vouches, our own conscience vouches, the way we have been created vouches, and in fact, every single sign found exterior to our being also vouches. So the question is that this accountability, which is such an all-important and all-embracing human concept, how attentive we can be to it, and how vigilant and diligent we should be vis-a-vis thinking that whatever we do, whatever actions and deeds and intentions that emanate from us, all of them will be held accountable before the Almighty. So yes, human beings, as human beings, we tend to forget. We tend to be elusive of some of the facts that should always remain in our mind. So one of the arrangements which the Almighty has made to make us continuously reflect on the fact that yes, there is going to be an hereafter, yes, we will be answerable before the Almighty, is the fact that He has created this world in a way that all these things that He has created, they occur in pairs. So there is a pair that you can find in everything, and these pairs, they actually give us this sense that one member of a pair, without imagining the other member, is incomplete, and it doesn't fulfill the purpose. For example, a very prominent paired creation is the creation of man and woman. So man alone does not give us the answers which actually arise as a result of his existence. There are some requirements that he has, there are some psychological, physiological, and of course emotional needs that he has, which can only be fulfilled if the vacuum in him is fulfilled by another being, which we call woman. So whenever we imagine human beings, and if we start imagining just one of them, for example, we start imagining just men or just women, there would be this odd question which might come to our mind, that what exactly is the purpose of a single gender creation? But when we view both genders together and we see how they come together to fulfill the scheme of God, and they also complement one another in their potentials, their abilities, and their various emotions, do we realize that yes, now this paired phenomena of human beings is a complete whole, and it has been brought into existence for a purpose. Similarly, day and night, this is a very prominent pair. We know the day is needed for the livelihood and for other things that we do, and the night is needed for rest, and our body is automatically tuned to rest at night. So we fall asleep at night. We don't fall asleep during the day, because the day is created in a way that you feel that energy, and you feel vigor in yourself, and you go out and earn your livelihood and do other activities. So although day and night, they are entirely diametrically opposite, so one gives light and the other is absolutely dark, yet when they are viewed together, we see how they complement one another, and how things which are reared and nourished in the day and night, they come together as a single purpose. Another very common observation is the paired phenomenon of the sun and the moon. So the dim light of the moon at night, and the dazzling light of the sun in the morning or in the day, is something which clearly complement one another. So the sun and the moon both form a pair, and the Quran has mentioned them in pairs as well. So from here, the Almighty has drawn another conclusion. He has said that we have created everything in pairs. If you start looking at this and start reflecting, then you'll also find that this world should also have a pair, because this world seems incomplete. It has things that do not answer a lot of questions. However, as soon as we view this world with the next world, and we view them as a complete whole, as if they are two parts, they are two members of the pair, then you find that there is a meaning to this world. Then you find that the two have been created together to fulfill a common purpose. Just to give you one example, in this world, we will never find perfect justice. We only find possible justice, and that too eludes us on so many occasions. And we would find ourselves at loss to see that how can a person, or how can a world which has been created by the Almighty be run in a way that there are so many injustices, oppression, people not attended to, and things that they are mind-boggling. And it is only when we realize that this place or this world is a place in which justice is not to be sought in the ultimate sense. Justice is not to be obtained in the ultimate sense, because you can never be perfect in the administration of justice. For example, even if you get as possible a justice as you can, all that you can do is you will be punishing someone, or maybe rewarding someone for some things that you might apparently know that he or she has done. There are so many things that are done and they do not come in notice of people, and they might be evil things, they might be good things, and they would of course not entail any apparent reward or punishment. But when you view this world with the hereafter, we find how perfectly the two match one another, and how perfectly, like a jigsaw puzzle, they fit into another. And we find that the incompleteness that is found in this world is perfectly supplemented once we start viewing this world with the next one. So we have things that go on in this world. We have our desires which are left unfulfilled. And this, of course, is a phenomena that is common to all human beings. We desire eternal life. There is no such thing as eternal life. We have to die one day. We desire things that not only justice should take place, but we also desire that people should behave according to what they have been told as people who are good human beings. But seldom do we find this in this world. People violate the norms of being human beings as well. So this imperfection, which is a very common hallmark that you'll find in this world, once you start viewing it with the next world, you'll find that now it makes sense. Yes, there is this incompleteness found in this world, and once you view it with another world, it now starts to make sense. So precisely this is the reason that the Quran states here, وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ, that we have created everything in pairs so that you are reminded of the hereafter. That just as a man needs a woman, and just as day needs night, and just as sun and moon, they come together to complement one another, only you can understand this world once you understand the next world also. Once you accept that there is going to be another world, only then things will make sense. And that is why the Almighty wants us to hunt for the pair of this world also. If everything has as a pair, then this world should also have a pair. And that is precisely what the Quran is pointing to in this particular verse. And as you can see, it's a subtle insinuation, but yes, people who have discerning minds, people who have a keen eye, they can clearly see how important this creation of pairs is. Now we move on to the next segment of our study circle. In this we study a hadith of the Prophet, and this hadith has been taken from the Al-Jami As-Sahih of Imam Muslim, and it has been narrated by Abu Barza. So he says, قال قلت يا نبي الله علمني شيئا أنتفع به قال الإعزل الأذى عن الطريق المسلمين. So Abu Barza reported, I said, O Prophet of God, teach me something which is beneficial to me. He said, remove things from the paths of Muslims which are a source of bother for them. So these are small acts of kindness, you can say. These are things which the Almighty's Prophet has said on so many occasions at the request of people, and people have asked him that if they would like to be useful individuals, they would like to be beneficial individuals, they'd like to benefit humankind and the society that they live in, what should they do? And this is one similar question that was asked by Abu Barza, and a simple answer which the Almighty's Prophet gave was that you just remove things from the paths of people, from roadsides, from pathways, from ways that people are walking and treading, things that might be a source of harm for them. For example, thorns, for example, litter, for example, in things that might be a source of injury for people. So all these things, if you come across them, it's very instinctive for us. As human beings, we instinctively lift up these things and we just dispose them off. But at times, we might ignore them and must just take our own path and just let them be. It is here that the Prophet has cautioned us that if you see something which is harmful, if you've noticed it, then don't be ignorant to it. Do not disregard it. You have to be a person who is useful to the society. And viewers, you can see that this is a very small thing that one can do. It's something which is very trivial. But you know what? The important thing here is to realize that our Prophet, our beloved Prophet, has this knack of teaching us these small things so that we are careful in those large things also that we might come across. So if we are careful in small deeds, if we are careful in helping people out from any harm that they might encounter in a very small way, we are definitely going to be ones which will never let people come into harm's way when that harm is immense, when that harm is going to engulf people. So this is like that training, the grooming which prophets of God do. And of course, this is something which is also inbuilt in us. This is something for which we don't know. We don't need to have any instruction. But in spite of that, prophets of God and the Quran, both, what they do is they remind you of the goodness that you already have in your own self. They don't give you new guidance on most occasions, especially in the areas of morality. They only remind you of the morals that you have in yourself. So removing harm or taking it away from the path of people is something we innately know that it should be done. So prophets of God are just going to remind you, and similarly the Quran is going to remind you that, well, this is something that you already know and perhaps you are forgetting, or maybe you're not giving it due regard. So you should take care of that. And you see, this also gives us another very beautiful example of how the Almighty and how His Prophet are so cautious in grooming human beings, in caring about other people. You see, when you are removing harmful things from their way, what does this mean? It means that you care for human beings. It means that you think about their benefit. You would not like to leave them in any sort of bother. You would always be on the lookout. You'll always be guarding them. So you see, these are things which lead to much greater inferences. They lead to greater deeds, and they lead us to become people who are always mindful of other people, and especially people who are living close to us, especially people who are living in our own family, maybe in our own neighborhood, maybe amongst our own friends. So if you are removing harms or harmful things from the ways of people that they are passing, and you're doing so for unrelated people you don't even know. So all the more reason, if this is something that you would do, this will make you even more careful for people whom you know. So if you're doing something for unknown people, then this is going to prepare you for doing something for known people. Like, for example, as I said, your own relatives, your own friends, your own family members, your own domestic staff. So all these people who you know very well, you will be very careful in having them protected from any calamity that might come their way. So as a hadith, as a narrative of the Prophet, is something which really cautions us, it really prods us. It's a beautiful advice that he has given us, and this is something that we should pass on, not only through these words that he has said, but of course through our own actions, by becoming embodiments of people who are responsible for the well-being of our brethren. Now we come to the third section, or the third segment of our study circle. This relates to a passage from the Bible, and to be precise, we will be studying a small passage from the book of Leviticus, which is and the chapter 19 is under discussion, and verse 18 is what we will read. So it says, "Do not make attempts to get equal with one who has done you wrong, or keep hard feelings against the children of your people, but have love for your neighbor as for yourself. So this is, of course, something which is also found. It's mentioned in the commandments, 10 Commandments, and in the New Testament. But you can see Moses also being given this commandment that you must not equate yourself with people who are doing wrong, or keep hard feelings against the children of your people. So if people are doing wrong, you must not equate yourself in any way with them. You should not follow their ways. You should not become like them. You should have your own independent personality, and you should be a person who's always on the lookout to do good for other people. Similarly, harboring malice or harboring hard feelings or strong feelings or negative feelings for people is also that we are being told here in this book or in this verse that we should abstain from. And then it has that a very important ring right at the end, that but have love for your neighbor as for your own self. That just as you love your own self, you love your neighbor as well. So such is the importance of people who live right in our neighborhood, right next door, that we have to be their well-wisher. We have to love. If we love our own self, then that love is not complete unless we love our neighbor. And of course, loving our neighbor is something which means that we are always trying our best to help our neighbors in any way that they would need. For example, they could be needing your advice, they could be needing emotional support, they might be needing financial support, they might be needing various other forms of support. So to be always on the lookout, always thinking of them, of our neighbors. And if you do so, you would realize that especially when we are living in an urban culture, when we are living in an era in which urbanization has gone to such extremes that at times the months and years pass before we are even acquainted with our neighbor, our immediate neighbors, simply because life is so fast, simply because our routines are so set that we are, not even bothered about our surroundings. So this was something which was easy in the rural culture, which existed in the times of the prophets of God. They had this rural culture in which people were much closer to one another. People lived as if they were, in fact, true brothers and sisters to one another. They would care for each other because of the fact that they would share the same wall, they would share the same surroundings, and often they would go out and come out and meet each other in a very common way. But after this urbanization, this end of the rural culture, although it's not the end of the rural culture, I would say, we still have cultures in which people are very close to each other. For example, our villages and other rural areas, we still find a lot of closeness amongst people, in which people care about one another. Neighbors have the same rights as your own sisters and brothers. But this is especially an effort that people who are living in cities and countries where urbanization has taken its toll, that they must make it a special effort to acquaint themselves with the people who live next door. For the people who live next door have a right on us, and we have an obligation towards them. And this can only be fulfilled if we know what they are passing through and how they are managing their life. And if we are individuals who can take care of our neighbors, and every neighbor can take care of his or her neighbor, we can well imagine how closely knit the whole society can be, the whole neighborhood can become, because everyone is on the lookout for his or her brother or his neighbor. So this is what prophets of God want to create. They want to create a society in which this concern for one another, this sympathy for one another, this act of looking out for one another is always at the top. And not only do the people, they practice this, but through their own practice, one of the most important tasks that they do is that they become role models for their children, the next in kin, the next of their generation, because you need to pass down this torch to the next generation so that they also follow you, and wherever they need to be coached or trained or groomed, they are done not merely through words but through deeds. And this can best be done if people can witness these things. They can observe these. The young minds, they observe, they have a very keen sense of observation, they have a very sharp observation. If they see their own parents and their own elders looking after their neighbors and being on the lookout for them and always attending to their affairs, there is little doubt to think that they would not be the same as well. So this is a two-way obligation. It's an obligation that we need to carry out, and it's an obligation which will become part of the society only when we do it in front of our, children and next of kin in a way that they get inspired by this. So now we come to the fourth and final segment before we start off with the Q&A, and this is a segment in which we discuss experiences and share our wisdom and experiences as well, and it's a moderated session. So the question that we are going to table here, and we would like to hear your views, is what is the greatest issue faced by Muslims of today? And the implied, of course, discussion that we would like from all of you who would like to participate is that if you can pinpoint the issue, of course, and it would be even good if you can also bring a solution. If you think that, for example, poverty is a big issue, so one of the greatest issues which might face Muslims today is, for example, if someone says it's poverty, then it's easier said than done. So would you be having any suggestions to alleviate poverty, to make people better individuals in case of their finances? So just an example. So over to you, Mariam. Kindly please moderate this session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I'll start off with what I think, in my opinion, is the greatest issue, which I think it's that we take Islam as a specific set of rituals in a lot of places instead of seeing the whole picture alongside those rituals. So, for example, we may be focusing a lot on our prayers or fasting, but we're forgetting that there are all these other things that we need to be doing as well. Some of the stuff that you mentioned today, for example, taking care of your neighbors or feeling for others. For example, our personal hygiene that affects others that are around us, and so on. And so this leads us down to a path where, we very rightly condemn, for example, what's happening between the Israel and Palestinian war, but we also have a lot of places where it's Muslims fighting other Muslims for years, and humanitarian crisis in areas like Yemen, where that isn't talked about as much, I think. So it's so one way to, what I think, to fix this is to not just teach Islam as like, okay, you need to do XYZ and that's it, you're a Muslim. You have to learn all the other things about it too, and that comes from reading the Quran, which a lot of people don't do, while understanding it, not just reading it, but reading it with understanding. And also focusing on, as you said, our actions instead of, just the words, but also showing with our actions what it means to be a good Muslim. And if there's something that's happening that's wrong by other Muslims, we should also stop them and tell them, like, hey, this is against what Islam stands for, and so on.
Right. So what I gather from your words is that one of the things that is plaguing our Muslims today is this ritual-centric approach in which we think that Islam is a bunch of rituals that we need to follow and observe, like fasting and praying and giving zakah and going for Hajj and Umrah. And the human element, or the other aspect of religion, in which you have to deal with your fellow brethren and you have to be a person who is going to be a friend to them, a confidant, a helper, a supporter, that is gravely missing. When we teach Islam, we teach people to observe rituals, and seldom does this part of Islam comes into play, in which we have to make them realize that you have to become good individuals, because these rituals in themselves, they are not an end. They are a means to an end, and that means is that, or that end is actually to becoming a good person. So if your rituals are not changing your life for the better, it means that you have not realized that these rituals are not an end in themselves, they are a means to an end.
Thank you for articulating that so well, Dr. Saleem, mashallah. I also want to add that this is a problem that I saw more in our Middle Eastern society, South Asian society. In the West, I see the opposite, where people are focused on Islam as a culture rather than a religion. So they think Muslims are a culture. So it's like the other extreme, where it's you're like, oh, I'll be good to everybody around me, and that's it. That's all I need to be a Muslim. while
Right.
forgetting all the huququllah that they also need to
Right.
fulfill.
Hmm. So you have to strike a balance, and just as you have to fulfill the rights of the Almighty, you have to fulfill the rights of your brethren as well. So we find two extremes in our Eastern societies or our South Asian societies and Middle Eastern culture. We have more impetus and more focus on rituals, as opposed to Western societies, in which, of course, rituals are at times sacrificed, but the aspect in which you are a good human being, that is emphasized. And you see, both are extremes, and we need to merge the two.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. So my understanding from as I'm becoming older is I realize that Muslims are, I think, aren't united. I think unity is a problem, not being as educated is a problem, and being over emotional is a problem.
So, I mean, you have to point out the one greatest. You see, I mean, there are several issues that we find ourselves facing, but I would request you to limit yourself to the greatest issue that you think is worth pointing out.
I think unity.
Unity.
I think unity. Unity.
Okay.
I feel the way to make anything happen or to make a change is if you're united as a force. I think all the other nations, not nations, but cultures, seem to be, even if they have differences, they seem to unite on the bigger issues. Where the greater good is concerned, where their own people are concerned, they form an alliance and they don't let go. Their strength is in their numbers. We may look at Indians, we may look at the Caucasians, look at the Jews. Uh, Muslims don't seem to have that. We have almost 37 countries in this world, but we cannot seem to agree on one thing and make it happen. So I feel that is something that needs to be taught from when you're a child, that you are supposed to not have little differences. And that, I think, has been the greatest problem, because we have so many fiqhs. And I think everybody is made to feel that if you're a Sunni, then Shia is bad. If you're a Barelvi, then this one is bad. If you're a Wahhabi, then people who who are let's say followers of some kind of a peer, they are a problem. So people can't seem to agree on that basic impetus that life is supposed to be about humanity. It is not about rituals all the time. I think, as Mariam pointed out, that rituals have become so great that that humanity has completely gone to waste. So I feel that is something we need to work on as a people.
And for the achievement of unity, what would be your suggestion? How can unity be achieved?
I think we have to keep our emotions under check. The greater good, the concept of greater good is what's important. So I feel when 20 or 30 people get together, even in a smaller meeting, there are times people don't agree on things. But I think if emotions are kept under check, and if people are constantly reminded that have to be focused on the greater good, keep your eye on the ball, do realize that you're working towards a better world for the future generations. I think that is something that needs to be constantly reminded to our children, so they can probably be better humans than us. I think we let our emotions get in the way, and unity never remains the main focus. It always becomes, what I am saying has to be more important, because my emotions somehow are more important, or my feelings are more important than X, Y, and Z.
So the word unity, perhaps, if you replace it by tolerance, wouldn't that be more descriptive of what you have in mind? That if we are tolerant to one another, instead of calling out names or maybe giving them titles, every person has a different personality. He might or she might have a different view, whether it's a world view, whether it's a religious view, whether any view that a person might have. So instead of labeling people, I mean, we need to accept and be more magnanimous, so to speak, that everyone has a right to exist and a right to have a view. And am I understanding you correctly that perhaps what you are saying is?
I'm trying to say is that, yesterday we had a meeting with one of the congresswomen here who had voted against Rashida Talib. So it was around 30 or 40 people who got together, and we had to decide before meeting her as to what we were going to say. There were so many different emotions in that group. Everybody was working towards the same goal. But even just as Pakistanis, or just as a group of individuals who had exactly the same cause in mind, we had to really work towards, that end point where we would be sitting down with her and telling her what we felt, and lots of people didn't show up because they just couldn't keep their emotions in check and didn't realize that the greater good is simply in the fact that all of us being Muslims, we need to sit together and have a cohesive voice where we can talk to the congressperson so we can tell them how we are feeling. So that was something that really stood out to me, because I've realized in all other circles, that's how they are successful. Even if we look at the Indians right now, or we look at the Jews, who are just 20 million in this world, they are just a collective force. So I feel that is something we lack. And then we had a discussion on this yesterday, that lots of people didn't show up. Only half the people showed up because people just couldn't seem to agree on the fact that you have to put your grievances aside. You need to talk to her first and understand where she's coming from. So I realized that it's that's something that really stood out to me, and I just wanted to kind of talk about it here. I don't know if I've been able to explain myself.
Right. No, you have. Thank you.
Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, I think that we as Muslims and as Muslim individuals, we have become self-centric more than, we think what's good for me, not what's good for us. Allah teaches us that we are one Muslim body. If any part of our body hurts, the whole body should feel, sick. But we don't.
Right.
And we just make dua and say Allah will make it better. But we don't feel pain what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Palestinian as a body. And I think that we lack in our education in that sense also, that we teach our kids, we make them how to learn how to get a good job, how to land a good job, and not how to become good Muslim, and how to become good parents or good kids or good Muslim. So that's the thing. I think in conclusion, like so after First World War, Second World War, European people or non-Muslim people, they learned a lesson that we cannot fight with each other. We have to stay united, make somebody our defender, and we'll be in progress. But when are we gonna learn? In Pakistan, people, a group of people, everybody thinks about what's good for me, not what's good for Pakistan. Here in America, yesterday, I think last week, our sister Bisma was talking about that there were 2 students who got thrown out of university because they led a procession against Gaza, what's happening in Gaza. 2 professors, they got banned or reprimanded because they stood for them. So, and we are being quiet. We're saying we don't have a say. No, we have a say if we become united, like she was saying earlier. I endorse everything she said. And there are 2, 3 senators. She mentioned one of the name, a couple of other who are only 2, 3 senators who are the ladies. They are in our Senate. We need more people in there. We don't have a say in a political arena. We don't have any say in the policy making, because our focus is how to make good money, not how to do good for Muslims.
So, Akram Bhai, if I request you, if you state if you give us one sentence in which you could outline what exactly is the greatest issue, what would you say?
I would say our education is not on the right path. We do not get education.
And by education, you mean religious education or all types of
religious and political too, political as well.
Okay. Thank you.
जी उस्ताद मैं उस्ताद निगत हाशमी के अल्फाज यहाँ बोरो करूँगी। उन्होंने कहा था कि पहले लोग बुत परस्त होते थे और अब खुद परस्त होते चले जा रहे हैं, और मुझे भी ऑब्जर्वेशन से यही दिखता है। यानी अगर हम आसपास गौर करें तो घरेलू ज़िंदगी में जो अफराद हैं उनको भी ले लें, और जो एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट्स में हमें यूथ नज़र आती है या कारोबारी हजरात नज़र आते हैं मुख्तलिफ जगहों पे, हर जगह मुझे ये देखने में आया है कि लोग अपने एम्स या अपनी तरजीहात को लेकर इतने ज़्यादा कॉन्शियस होते हैं कि वो उस कोशिश के रास्ते में कितनी चीज़ों को कुचलते चले जा रहे हैं, कितने हुकूक व फ़राइज़ को नज़रअंदाज करते चले जा रहे हैं, कितने लोग उनसे गलत इम्प्रेशन लेते हुए अपनी ज़िंदगी को उसी लाइन पे सेट करते चले जा रहे हैं। वो इस चीज़ का एहसास ही नहीं करते। वो हो सकता है जिस मैदान में मेहनत कर रहे हों, जिस मकसद को लेकर चल रहे हों, वो उसमें कामयाब होते चले जा रहे हों बज़ाहिर। लेकिन हमारी ज़िंदगी एक पहलू नहीं रखती, उसके कई पहलू होते हैं। तो बाकी पहलुओं में वो शख्स बहुत ज़्यादा एक गलत इंप्रेशन दे रहा होता है और
Mm-hmm.
उसको इस चीज़ का एहसास ही नहीं होता। वो सिर्फ़ एक ही चीज़ को लेके चल रहा होता है और फिर बाज़ औक़ात अगर कोई शख्स कोशिश भी करे, तो उसको फिर यही कहा जाता है कि लोग तो कभी खुश नहीं होंगे। इस तरह के नेगेटिव सेंटेंसेस बोलकर अ, य खुद परस्ती अपनी
Okay,
ज़ात
so
में
what you're
बहुत ज़्यादा
talking about is self-centeredness and selfishness. This is something which plagues Muslims all over the world. That is what you're saying, that all over the world we find Muslims more concerned about their own selves, selfish, self-centered, egotistic, always disregarding other people and giving preference to their own needs. Is that what you're saying?
जी उस्ताद, मैं यही कहना चाह रही हूँ।
Right. So, Ani, your thesis is that as Muslims, we have to become altruistic, we have to become selfless, we have to think about others, we must not be self-centered. And this self-centeredness has created a lot of problems, and problems, of course, abound. The greatest of those problems being that when we are always focused on our own selves, we disregard the existence of other human beings around us, and this human element gets subtracted. This humanity that we have in our own selves, it is sacrificed, and we are more concerned at every step about how I would survive, how I would go forward, how my family or my own brethren would prosper, and we seldom think about, or maybe don't think about at all, about others who might be around us. So, thank you for this diagnosis.
Thank you very much. Rafia Khwaja, you're up next, and then we'll take Noshad Shafkat, and then we'll move on to Q&A. Rafia, please go.
Dr. Shehzad, I think one of the biggest problems we Muslims are facing is that we don't realize our mistakes. Everything that is going wrong in the world is the fault of the other people, the Westerners, everything,
Okay.
whatever is happening, the wars and all. I think we have to look inside ourselves. The Palestinian situation is very tragic, but we also have to analyze and see where Hamas is, what they did. Is it a peaceful organization? So I think the biggest tragedy is that innocent Palestinians are being killed. I think our biggest mistake we are making is that the Muslims don't realize the mistakes they are making, and the blame is always on the other side.
The others, okay. So we don't hold ourselves to be accountable. We hold other people accountable. We don't look inside our house. We're always blaming other people for what's happening, like these conspiracy theories and so many other things that go on unchecked. Rather than analyzing what we are doing wrong, we are always entrusting on what other people are doing wrong, and analyzing self-analysis is something which is gravely lacking, if that's what I've understood from you.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Noshad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, I would state it in one sentence first, that we do not follow the democratic way of ruling over our people.
Okay.
It is, I feel that the failure of the Muslim as an ummah to respond to the violence and the butchery that is taking place in Palestine is the silence of the Muslim, which is deafening, is because the rulers in most of the Arab states are dictators who rely on the West for their very own survival. And it is within memory that President Trump had said that he had asked Saudi Arabia to pay X billion dollars for their security, and if they didn't, and America removed its support to them, they wouldn't be there last a week. So it is the suppression of democracy, people's rule. Why are people not standing up in Saudi Arabia and other countries of the Middle East, the UAE? Why are they silent? Because there we have despotic rulers who are not willing to listen to a word of what their people think about them or about issues, and they decide according to what America asks them to do, because they rely for their very existence, for their very survival as rulers on the United States.
So your diagnosis is that the failure or the non-presence of democracy in most Muslim countries is the culprit, and we mostly have dictatorial rules here in most countries, and other than that, we have theocratic rule, for example, in Saudi Arabia. But that theocratic rule is also a despotic one, in which there is this monarch or this dictator who is installed at the top, and there is no voice of people that to be found, as a result of which people who might give or who might have sane voices or who might represent sane voices, they are given no chance or no representation, and the result is that it's the decision of a few individuals who have some way found their way to the top that is implemented, and a lot of things that could have been thrashed out and discussed and therefore become a collective decision no longer is the case. So thank you for this.
Sir, just one sentence more, that it has been very nicely put that in the colonial era, the policy of the Western colonizers was a divide and rule policy. They didn't, because they were present here in person, they didn't want the people here to unite. Now that they have gone back to what is called neo-colonialism, the policy is unite and rule. Have one strong ruler, have him in your pocket, and the country is with.
That's nicely put.
Thank you.
Unite and
Thank
rule. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll be moving on to the Q&A now. So we have a question that asks, in Quran, Surah Rahman, Allah has said that He is Malik of both Maghrib and both Maghrib, where there's only one Maghrib and one Mashriq. But
Right.
He says that He's Malik of both Maghrib and Mashriq. So what does He mean by two Maghrib?
Actually, this the tasniya or the dual in the Arabic language also encompasses vastness. So it's not, the correct translation would not be two Maghribs or two Mashriqs. It was basically the vastness of the two. So if you look at the east side, it's spread on your right, on your right side, and the west side is on your left side. And the way it is spread, it has two corners as well. So it's like saying that these are the two easts or the two wests. But in fact, what has been said here is the vastness that encompasses these directions. So this direction is not a linear direction. It's not like a line that is drawn or can be horizontally drawn on the right side or on the left side, or even for that matter vertically. It's a whole thing. It's like a whole phenomena. It's the vastness of the east and the vastness of the west, with the two corners emanating from there until there. So basically what is being told here is that vastness. And at another place it is said Rabbul Mashariki wal Magharib. Just as the dual is used here, which means two wests and two easts, at another instance in the Quran the words are Lord of all the easts and Lord of all the wests. So of course when you say these words in the plural, it's not that you have multiple wests or you have multiple easts. In the Arabic language, the plural also denotes the vastness of something. So in most languages, like for example in the Urdu and the English language that we are used to mostly, you will find that the plural is always denoting the number. I mean, if you have one, you will say that plural would be more than two or more than one, and the dual would be like two. So this is the case with some languages that we know. But in the Arabic language, just as the plural and the dual come for, for the purpose that you would like to say that they are numerous in number or more than one in number, they also denote this vastness or this expanse of something. So when it is said in Surah Rahman, Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain, more precise translation would be that He is the Lord of the vastness of the East, and He is the Lord of the vastness or the expansive West or the expansive East.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question asks, कुछ लोग ये कहते हैं खुदा अपने हम्द और सना करने के लिए कहते हैं, इतना खुद पसंद है वो। ऐसी बात को सुनकर क्या कहना चाहिए या क्या दलील पेश करनी चाहिए?
Well, you see, when we praise God, when we exalt Him, it's not that glorification that is needed. It is basically an acknowledgement of the favors that we get from Him. So His exaltedness, His or the praise that we might say in a few words, or we glorify Him. It's that glorification and that exaltedness and that particular utterance that we do is not like praising Him for the sake of praise. It's basically because of the fact that whatever He does is beneficial to us. The fact is that if He is glorious, if He is exalted, it's not something which is in His own right, but the fact is that His glory, His exaltedness is beneficial to humankind. So when we say Subhanallah, which is one of the utterances which expresses God's glory, it's like it's His sana. What do we exactly mean? We mean that He's exalted. He has all those attributes which are free of any negative implication, because His glory, His benefit, His magnificence, His splendor is something from which we are benefiting from. So you see, glorification and expressing one's praise is, as I said, it emanates from that sense of gratitude that you feel, and as a result of which you say Subhanallah or Alhamdulillah. So Subhanallah is basically something which you say in sana, and Alhamdulillah is something what you say in his praise. And the word Alhamd, a more appropriate translation is gratitude be to God, not praise be to God. So basically, hamd sana or glorifying Him and expressing our gratitude is because of the fact that we draw numerous benefits from Him directly and from what He has created for us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, it is claimed that the verses of Rajam existed earlier but could not be preserved, so today's Quran was deprived of them. In proof of this claim, Sayyidina Umar narrates, the revelation that Allah revealed to you included the verse about stone. We read it and memorized it. And the Messenger of Allah, Prophet Muhammad, stoned married adulterers, and we did the same after him. Can you please clarify this saying?
You see, there are two types of narratives which exist. So one type of narrative just refers to the fact that Umar Anhur said that Rajam is something that took place in the times of the Prophet, and we knew of a verse which alludes to it. This is one category of narratives. Another category of narratives also ascribed to Umar and some other companions say that yes, Rajam is something that Prophet did, and we had a verse as well, and then that verse is cited, and that verse is Ash-shaykhu wa-shaykhatu iza zaniya farjumuhuma al-battata. This is a Quranic verse which is often said was the verse of Rajam, but it was taken out from the Quran. But it's operational still now. So although it's not found in the Quran, but its directive is still operational. So these are the two categories. So one category says that the verse of Rajam was there, but without naming it, without citing it. And this is ascribed to Umar. Second category also ascribed to Umar is, it also says that the Prophet did Rajam, stoning to death, and then it cites this verse which I just narrated before you. So this second category of narratives, if you look at them, you'll find that they are not correctly reported. They are not authentically reported. and you'll find that they have been critically evaluated and they cannot be accepted. But the other category of narratives which says that yes, Umar said that there was this verse of stoning. If you look at the words of, if you don't depend on the words of this narrative, and you also see that the Quran does have a source of rajam found within it, then you will get to the right inference, and that is that yes, the punishment of stoning was mentioned indirectly in the Quran. And that is, if you read Surah Maida, which is the 5th surah, and you read verses 34 and 35, they present the punishments of spreading anarchy in the land. For example, creating a law and order situation, taking the law in your own hands. And the Quranic words are يَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا الَّذِينَ يُحَارِبُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, those who wage war against God and His Prophet. And in this way, يَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا, they strive to spread anarchy in the land. Their punishments are then mentioned, and these are 4 in number. So one of the topmost or the foremost is the most stringent or the severest of those punishments, and that is qattalu, which means to kill someone in an exemplary way. So this word, to kill someone in an exemplary way, this one of the application of this was the punishment of stoning, which meant that people who do not deserve any leniency, for example, people who rape other women or children, for them this punishment was prescribed, to kill someone in an exemplary way. Now, when you stone to death someone, you kill that person in an exemplary way, and rapists, for example, were punished in this way. So the bottom line is that as far as this narrative is concerned, it is referring to the fact that yes, stoning to death was a punishment that was done in the times of the Prophet, but it was not done because of some verse which I just specified, the existence of that verse, and which was left out, but because of the fact that Surah Maida's verse, which says that you kill someone in an exemplary way who is responsible for spreading anarchy in the land. There are other 3 punishments as well which are mentioned subsequently, but the first of them is an yuqattalu, which means to kill someone in an exemplary way. And the Prophet did kill people in an exemplary way. We have examples, but as I said, they are specific examples which relate to rape. And the word which the Quran has used is not to stone to death. It has just said kill someone in an exemplary way. In those times, one of those ways in which we could kill someone in an exemplary way and who really deserved that punishment was this punishment of rajam or stoning to death. So basically it was an application of this verse of Surah Maida that the Prophet, that the Caliph Umar was referring to. That's how I understand, and that is how many scholars understand this hadith.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Bismillah, Tirmizi Ahmed, you're up next. Please go ahead.
So my question to you, Dr. Saleem, is that, when we say that God was upset with the Jews and he said that, they will be ignored, or I don't have the right word, that, they will be punished forever. Why is it that they're still so prosperous? And I believe from our many discussions that it was the Christians who were supposed to, it was on their back that Jews could flourish. Now, is that correct? And if that's so, where is it said, and what is the historical reference for that?
So you see, the Quran has said that because of the fact that the Israelites were recipients of the message of God for 2,000 years, prophets came to them, between Moses and Jesus, of course, you find a string of prophets, a whole array of prophets coming one after the other. And in some eras, in those centuries, there were times in which one prophet would come and the other would go and give that prophet that baptism, in which he would say that now my successor is this next prophet. So such is the history of the Israelites, that they were the recipients of several prophets of God, and the last of those prophets was Jesus. And they not only rejected him, but they went after killing him. They never succeeded, of course, but they even tried to kill him. So for them, the law was that they are going to be punished until the day of judgment, and the way that they would be punished is, the Quran says, وَجَعِلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوكَ فَوْقَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَىٰ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, that they will always remain subservient to the followers of Jesus, and of course, which are the Christians. And if you study history, you'll find that throughout history, they have been always subservient to the Christians. And when you study history, you don't study history in a way that things happen in 30 or 40 years. But if you look at these over the centuries where the Jews were exiled from various places, you will find that there are ups and downs in their history. So if you see them gathering at one place, for example, today they find them in Israel, which was a state founded, let's say, 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. This is just a small period of history in which you're seeing them rise. But then their rise is at the behest of Christians. So at the backing of these Jewish powers is the Christians. So it's like basically they are subservient to them, but they are like an unruly sort of servant who's looking after your house in a way that he literally becomes the master, and you know that you just cannot do without him. So such is their position. And just about 50 years ago, when Hitler, this is not more than 50 years ago, it's like maybe 90 years ago, yeah, in 1930s and 1940s in the Second World War, when the Jews were, they were terribly, massacred. So you'll find that that was one time in history in which this happened, and now there is a break in that, and since that time up to now, they are now once again gathering at one place, and they're once again seemingly in very prosperous situations. But as I said, this happens in history, that because they are ordained to go from one place to another and to be punished from one person by one person to another, this is just an in-between period in which they are now, so to speak, seemingly flourishing. And if you look at history, these periods come in short whiles, and then they are battered or they're exiled, and then once again they gather at other places and once again flourish and prosper, and then once again they face the wrath of God. So this is like a cycle that is going on. So looking at what is happening now should not fool us to think that, well, they are now prospering. No, it's like that lull before a storm, which is bound to take place, because it took place for the previous so many centuries. It's going to take place in future as well. It's just a question of waiting and seeing if we are alive.
Okay, so my question to you is that when they were when Moses came down from the mountain, and they were the Jews were praying to a cow, and Aaron was there, so that was not the time they were cursed. That was the time when they were forgiven for the next 1500 years until Jesus came.
No, actually, that was the time in the time of Moses himself, that they were forgiven, not just for the later years. For Moses, his own tenure, in his own period, they were given this chance that now that the Sharia has been given to them, he had gone to receive the Torah, and when they had indulged in this calf worship, they were punished, and they were punished very severely. They were people who were perpetrators of this. They were guilty of this crime. They were put to death, because the punishment of polytheism in the presence of God's messenger, at God's behest, is death. So that is what they did. But then the remaining people, who did not indulge in polytheism, they remained on the right path, and of course other things happened. So basically, the cow worship was a phenomena which took place in the times or in the era of Prophet Moses, and people were punished for that. But this is not exactly what we are speaking of at this juncture. So as a body, they are, the Quran says that they will be exiled from one place to another, and every now and then, Surah Bani Israel, the Quran says that He will depute on them, Ibadan lana uli ba'sin shadid, that my servants who will be very, very severe on them. So this is a practice that is going on. If you study their history, you'll find that in various periods of time, this is what happened, and it's just happened about, as I said, 60 or 70 years ago through the hands of Hitler, and it's now bound to happen, in later times, if you are able to see that.
So do we know what land they went to when they were with Moses after that, where they settled, or we don't know? What land were they set?
They of course, they were not able to enter Palestine for 40 years, as we know, but later on they were able to enter Palestine, and they were settled there. So they were there, and then after that there was a whole series of events that took place, and that you can trace in history.
Yes, of course. So some atheists or non-believers ask, why does your God not permit shirk? Does He get jealous?
Okay. This is a very simple scenario. If you don't have any argument in favor of shirk or polytheism, why would you do that? So God says that if I had partners, I would have been the first one to tell people that I have partners. if I have said that I have no partners and you're still falsely imputing partners to me, then you are ascribing something which is totally false, and that is something which, of course, invokes His wrath. So, I mean, it's like a falsehood that you impute upon someone, and it's not a question of being jealous. I mean, the word jealous is a translation of the original Hebrew word, whatever that word would be. So you'll find in the Old Testament words like, your God is a jealous God. This is not the correct translation. It's basic. I think a more accurate translation would be that your God is an honorable God, and He would not tolerate partners with Him simply because He has no partners. If He had partners, He would have been the first one to inform people. And since He's not informed anyone that He has a partner, so if people are ascribing partners to Him, they are telling a lie. So it's against God's honor to accept such a lie. So that is the whole stance of God Himself, in which you see that He condemns people for polytheism. He says that this is sheer arrogance, in which not only arrogance but also your own extreme sense of falsehood that you are imputing against God. And that is why shirk is called iftara Allah. Iftara means to concoct and fabricate some falsehood against God. So because of the fact that you are doing something about which you have no proof, and the Quran is replete with these claims in which it says that, well, do you have any proof for your polytheism? Is there something that you could say that God had daughters? For example, the mushrikun said that the angels were daughters of God and they were His favored ones. So regarding all these polytheists, God has just one question to ask them, that where have you made partners for myself? And I myself tell you that I don't have any partners, and you insist that I still have partners. So this is where God is coming from.
मेरा सवाल ये था कि जैसे आपको पता है पूरी दुनिया में इसराइल और फ़लस्तीन का इशू चल रहा है, तो मुस्लिम मुल्क में ये कैंपेन चल रही है कि इसराइली प्रोसेस का बाइकआउट करें, लाइक कोको कोला, मैकडोनल्ड। तो मैंने पूछना है, क्या बाइकआउट करना इस चीज़ का हल है? इस्लाम बाइकआउट के बारे में क्या कहते हैं? क्या हमें इसराइली प्रोसेस का बाइकआउट करना चाहिए?
I think if this is to be a strategy, then it has to be a collective strategy. If you have to corner Israel in any way through its products, it could be a strategy, but it can only be successful if all Muslim countries unite in maybe proscribing that we'll not use these products. I mean, that is all that we can say. In the absence of any united strategy, it will be just a gimmick, I would say, just foolhardiness on our part that we stop using their products, because I mean, some of us would be using them, and a vast majority would be using them, and a very small number would be not using them. So this is like a personal decision that you would be taking, and that would have no impact on Israel or any such country. So I think it's not a question of what Islam thinks. It's more a question of strategy that you can adopt to corner a power which is indulging in such a genocide. So yes, it could be a way out, or it could be a way to sanction to impose economic sanctions on them. But this can only work if all Muslim countries, at least, they unite and take this decision at the state level, and then it gets implemented as well. But if it's not implemented and it's done on an individual basis, it's not going to have any impact, and it's just going to fizzle out, as has been the case on several previous occasions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Noshad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Sab, just a question. Can we equate the Bani Israel mentioned in the Quran with the present state of Israel, or are they different? Because
yes, they are. They are the same people. They are the Banu Abraham. They are the ones. Yes.
The right wing, the left wing rabbis who are against the state of Israel, against what they call Zionism, what would be the main difference between Zionism and Judaism? Because
yes. So you see, Zionism is a movement within Judaism in which actually talks about establishing or bringing into being a country like Israel, and all the Jews returning to that homeland, because they think it is a target which was given to them, and then they think that the Messiah that they are waiting for will come and build the third temple for them. So that is a whole new thing. But this is like a subset of the Jews, the Zionists. So not all Zionists are Jews, and of course Jews are a category of people who are followers of Moses, and people who live there, they are basically the Banu Abraham. But you have to differentiate between Zionists and Jews.
Right, sir. You just mentioned proverb lull before the storm. I would just like to add that it is always the darkest hour before dawn. Thank you.
Oh yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rafia Khwaja, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Dr. Saab, I'd like to know, with all the things that's happening in Israel, God has been very kind to them in the sense that some of the greatest scientists, doctors, engineers, Israel has produced. It's such a small country, but they are so far advanced. How would you explain this? That
I think
even
God has been kind to all people. It's not just the Jews, it's just the fact that they have harnessed their potentials. They have lived up to their potentials. They have, they have captured their potentials. The methodology that they have adopted is right. So all these potentials are distributed in all peoples of the world. But the Jews, they have taken one step ahead. They have been able to harness these potentials. You see, potential is something that is always there. This is something like a seed. And for the seed to become a tree or a flower, you have to work hard. So this seed is placed in every human being or many human beings. But you have to have the technique and the wherewithal to make that seed develop into a flower or blossom into a tree. So they have this technique of how they can nourish this inner talent and create something out of nothingness. But this is gravely lacking amongst many other people. So I find that the reason here is not as much as the fact that God is just magnanimous to the Jews. He's magnanimous to all of us, all human beings. The only thing is that you have to, as I say the word to me that comes to my mind is to harness your potential, to capture your potential, your inner ability to such an extent that you can make a difference. And that is what they have done.
Because, Dr. Saab, I was surprised that some blood test done in America are actually sent to Israel.
Yes.
For the findings. And
Right.
Such a big country with all the facilities. So I was just amazed. I thought there's something special. Are they geniuses? Or as you said, they have harnessed their potential. That is the only thing I can understand. And one thing further I'd like to say is that a lot of the Arab countries have recognized Israel. So when they have done it, how do we expect all the Muslim countries to get together and take action when these Arab countries are remaining quiet on this?
So as I said, you see, it's more of a political issue. Religion is a card that they play at times, but we need to look at this as more of a political issue because Israel was created from a political settlement in 1917, which was the Balfour Declaration done by Lord Balfour and his times, and it was a land that was promised to them as the result of helping the powers who were well-to-do in the First World War. So you see, it's basically a political question. It has to be dealt by a political scientist. What insight we people can give as students of religion is how at times religion is also a part of this political this phenomena. Otherwise, it's more of a political issue, I would say. Yes, it has been at times, you can see steeped with religion, but it's more of a political issue, I think, and that it has to be viewed as such as well.
And I think Pakistan was one of the few countries who refuses to recognize them, and yet all our Muslim brothers are looking up to them. So it's sad. Right. It's a sad situation, I think.
Thank you very
much. Thank you.
Dr. Saleem, I had a question for you. So with the current state of the world, I think, it's unavoidable to not look at the news. You're going to end up finding out what's happening, and it's very, very depressing. And there's some people that I know that are constantly, looking for updates, trying to find out. And I can see like they become more depressed. They are unable to function, normally in their own day-to-day life. And I understand that you want to be updated, you want to know what's unfolding around the world, but at the same time, I don't think it's very fruitful to do that, because it's detrimenting your life, and there isn't much that you can do from being outside that place besides making prayers and helping where you can in whatever means available to you. How would you strike a balance there, and is there any advice
I think that what we can do, of course, other than praying and maybe sending them help through various means, there are organizations who are working for them, medical help and help regarding their food, etc. United Nations programs are also working. What I think can be done other than that is to create awareness about the whole issue, and that awareness is to separate it, or I would say divide it into smaller parts, and look at how we Muslims are tackling this issue and how it must be tackled. And of course, the fact that there are certain religious wrongs that are being done that have to be addressed. For example, one of the religious wrongs that was done by Hamas when it started off this current scenario was to act or to be militantly aggressive against civilians or people who are non-combatants. So one of the very important statutes of religion is that you just cannot tamper with non-combatants. You just cannot, start killing innocent civilians. So I believe, if the news is correct, because there are things that are contradicting this news as well, but the very vast majority of news channels tell us that it was, of course, Hamas who had taken this aggression first, and they had started to kill innocent civilians by their bombs and missiles, and it was in retaliation what Israel is doing now. And of course, it's crossing the limits. You're not justifying what they are doing, but the thing is that it was the Hamas which took the first strike, and that too not on any army or any wars that they were waging, but on civilians. The one thing that we have to understand is that we must always start off analyzing world situations by seeing where we are going wrong. I think one area where Muslims have gone wrong many times before, and they're still going wrong, is that you just cannot tamper with the lives of non-combatants, number one. And number two is that waging war, if you have to wage war, it has to be a proper war. And it's just common sense that you just cannot start committing suicide by attacking an enemy which is 10 times your size, or which has the backing of superpowers, that they will just crush you or they will make an example out of you. So this is also no wisdom, that you start tampering with things or engaging with your opponents in a militant way, in which you are giving them the chance to obliterate you, to totally squash you out of existence. They can do that if they want to. So this is the second important thing, that war, if it has to be waged, it has to be waged with certain norms, with a fair chance of winning. Otherwise, you're just offering yourself to death. And the third important thing is that you have to be dispassionate when you're analyzing a political situation. It's not always, we just cannot justify the huge genocide which the Israelis are now conducting. But then, of course, we have to be dispassionate, that we have remained militant. The Hamas, not only here, in this recent attack, but previously also, the militancy is there. You have to find a peaceful solution. You have to find a solution in which non-aggressive policies have to be adopted, in which you adopt certain things and you accept certain things. So at the moment, because of the past glory, because of that quest for that past glory, we are not willing to look at ground realities. We know that there was a time in which under United Nations we were given this opportunity, that this land of Palestine would be given in equal use for all the three Abrahamic faiths, the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims. But Muslims did not accept this solution, and they think that it is their sole right to own these places. So I think there are certain areas in which they have to revisit their political and religious views as well.